Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and thank you so much for clicking on today's video. This one is a classic. When I tell you that it has the wildest twist that you will never see coming, it's honestly insane. I do hope that you enjoyed the story. If you do, please give it a thumbs up. Anyways, on to the story. I, a 25-year-old female, have my own 2-bedroom apartment that used to belong to my uncle. I made a friend during my university years. I'll call her Mary. Mary had quite a hard home life, too long to detail here. I let her know that if she ever needed my help, she could always rely on me no matter what. When we graduated, I asked her to move in with me rent-free. She tried to pay, but I knew that she had a lot of debt trying to pay for uni, so I told her no, and to spend her money freeing herself from it. She was so thankful for this, and I loved having her live with me. We never fought about anything. Both of us have the same cleaning habits and TV interests, so there's never been any arguments over the remote or who has to take out the bins, etc. Tonight, we were out at a super fancy restaurant in London as Mary had finally paid off the last of her debt, secured herself an amazing promotion at her job, and also finally passed her driving test. All of these achievements in the same month were more than deserving of an award, so we splashed out. It was me, Mary, 4 of her work friends, and 2 friends we've known since uni. It was a great night, until I handed Mary a card saying how amazing she is and how lucky I am to have her as my best friend, with quite a bit of cash inside to put towards her first car. She started crying and thanking me, and we hugged for a very long time. When she pulled away, I told her that I was so proud of her for kicking life in the butt, becoming successful, and showing her dad that his dickhead ways couldn't keep her down. After how she'd struggled through uni, pushing pennies together and working shit jobs, seeing her in her dream career and being such an accomplished woman is absolutely inspiring to me. She looked mad and said, "Please don't do that. You know I don't like it when you do that." She'd never said anything like this to me, ever, so I have no idea where this was coming from. I apologized and said that I didn't realize saying these things would upset her, as it's never been my intention. She just scoffed and rolled her eyes, and when I looked up at her colleagues, they were all shaking their heads at me and glaring. I felt so awkward, I wanted to shrink back into my own skin, and I was mortified that I hurt Mary. Mary didn't talk to me for the rest of the night and ignored me at the table. When we split up to head home, none of her colleagues even looked at me as they left. I said sorry to Mary as she was heading to her room to turn in, but she just shrugged me off, told me she was tired and that we'd talk in the morning. I'm so anxious that she'll want to move out or never talk to me again. I keep going over every interaction in my head to see if I crossed a line in the past, but she never gave any indication that I upset her saying those things before. All her colleagues messaged me saying that I was an a-hole for saying those things to her and belittling her, but I never meant any of those things like that. I didn't know how to update anything as I've never posted here before, so when things happened, I wrote them down in a notepad to update later. But all of this stuff happened in the space of 1 day. I'm posting them all below because I didn't get the chance to write them up after everything happened, as my post didn't have a judgment yet. I saw a lot of mixed reactions to my post, but there was also some great advice in there about how to approach Mary, so thank you for that. I'm afraid all of that well-meaning advice turned out to be for nothing, so I'm sorry about it. Things are timestamped roughly to show how the day unfolded. Update 1 at 6:30 a.m. So I'm even more confused than ever right now. After staying up all night and being constantly on the verge of tears, I finally heard my roommate moving around the kitchen, so I went to talk to her. She acted totally normal and started talking to me about some drama at her work, while I just stood there kind of unsure about what was happening or what to do. So I apologized again. She looked at me in confusion and said, "Why are you sorry?" I reminded her of last night and how mad she was. Then she laughed and said that it doesn't matter. Don't worry about it. and then continued making breakfast. I asked her if I'd stepped over a line last night, if the money was too much, and if I made her feel inferior. And she said, "Nope, we're cool, it doesn't matter. I think everyone just misunderstood the situation. You're taking things to heart a little too much." I just am even more confused than ever. I told her about her friends texting me, telling me what I said was belittling and that I was an a-hole. She just shrugged and said that they probably misread things and that she'll talk to them. But I'm just so winded. I'm so tired because I haven't slept, because I thought she hated me, that I'd hurt her, that she'd never speak to me again. But she's fine. Like, she's completely normal and just chatting with me as if last night never happened. But I'm just so confused. After seeing so many "you're the a-hole" comments, I thought I'd really crossed the line this time. But she's not fazed at all. She seemed so upset, ignored me for the rest of the night, and her coworkers treated me like criminals. But everything's okay, I guess? I don't know anything anymore. I'm tired and I'm going to sleep. But things still seem unresolved to me. I'm going to talk to her about it when she comes back from work today, because her reaction still really bothers me. Update 2 at 10 a.m. I got a call from one of the university friends who was at the dinner last night, and we had a chat. She asked me if everything was okay between me and Mary, and she said that she'd never seen Mary snap at me like that until last night. I filled her in on everything that we talked about and how confused I was as well. She reaffirmed many of my feelings about this being very out of character for Mary, as she'd also congratulated Mary and said similar things, as well as given her a bit of money in a card, along with an expensive gift, as did many of the others. After talking to my friend, I decided that I needed to have a long sit down with Mary to clear things up. It's not only me who's confused by her behavior. Both of the university friends are coming around later to have a chat, since now we're honestly quite concerned about her. Her friends have not let up on their texts to me, so I don't think she's spoken to them. One said that I couldn't try and quote-unquote sweep this under the carpet, which is like, what? I'm thinking of blocking all of them, as they just won't leave me alone. Update 3, 4 p.m. This is not an update I expected to make. Not in a million years. Stuff really hit the fan and went sideways in a way that I never imagined. I'm confused, heartbroken, and really pissed off right now. Long story short, it's all an effing lie. One Redditor said that my friends might have said something to Mary's work colleagues about me that made them not like me. I talked to both of them when they came around in the afternoon, and they both denied any of that. The one I had spoken to earlier on the phone, we'll call her Claire, said that she'd called one of the work colleagues that they know slightly well in order to clear things up. Let's call this colleague Jane. Jane turned up at the flat and instantly looked pissed. I almost wanted to hide behind the kitchen counter when she came in and started glaring daggers at me. We all sat down and I let Jane know that I'd spoken to Mary about last night and that she was fine, but I was still confused. Jane then laughed and said, "Oh, don't try that stuff with me. You can't just pretend now that you've been exposed in public." The three of us looked at her without saying a word, as we were all confused now. Claire asked her what she meant, and Jane said that she knew how I really quote-unquote treated Mary. We both asked her to elaborate, and she stood up and went on this tirade about how I apparently regularly abuse and belittle Mary, then intimidate her into saying nothing about it, and put a smile on for others. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry at this point. She then showed me her text with Mary, where Mary wrote to her in distress about being locked in her room because I was having a meltdown about her making friends at work. Something that never happened. Claire and my other friend took the phone and looked through the messages as well, and I had to stop reading them as they all said stuff about how Mary was afraid of me and that I trapped her here and was extorting rent out of her. It all just leaves me numb and dead inside. Eventually, Claire got to a point where Mary said I'd cancelled her 21st birthday at university and told her that she wasn't allowed to go out. The thing is, Claire and my other friends were at Mary's 21st birthday, which I'd put over £500 towards to have a themed Great Gatsby night that she'd always wanted. which in the messages she was claiming never happened. We went over a lot of stuff in the messages and realized that Mary had been spreading lies about me to all of her colleagues about how I was abusive and she couldn't move out because I was charging her so much rent money. This absolutely shattered me. Mary was like a sister to me through our university years, and I couldn't fathom why she'd say any of these things. It took a long time, but after Claire and my friends went over all of the accusations with Jane, and I pulled up my bank details to show that Mary never made a single payment to me except for her half of the bills, she seemed to cool down and settled into the same confusion we were all feeling. She let us know that Mary told all of her colleagues this story, and that the reason they were mad at me is because Mary said that I like to use a manipulation tactic where I pretend that I support her through everything, but use her past against her whenever we're in private. They all thought that that's what I had been doing this last year, that everything I said was meant as a backhanded compliment. Honestly, I'm just so about everything. I can't even put into words the hurt and betrayal that I feel that she'd spread these lies about me. For what reason? What benefit? I could never lift a finger to hurt her, but she tells everyone at her work that I isolate her from the world. Claire had to calm me down, as I couldn't stop crying no matter what I did for ages. It was quite embarrassing, but I just couldn't do anything else. Now I'm a little more level-headed, still mad, but not crying anymore. I don't even want to look at Mary again. My friends have told me not to make any hasty decisions. Even Claire said that she was disgusted by the things that Mary was saying about me in the text when everyone knows them not to be true. I know that I probably won't be able to clear my name with her colleagues, but I don't really care about that. I just want to know why Mary said those things about me. Jane went quiet by the end of the discussion and left without saying much, so I don't know what that means for me in her eyes. My two friends are staying with me for the rest of the day until Mary comes home. We've all got a lot of questions for her to answer. Update 4, 10:15 p.m. I've booted Mary out of the flat. She threw away years of friendship for sympathy points with her colleagues, and I still cannot understand why. When she got home and saw that the three of us were watching television, she got excited and said that she'd make popcorn. But Claire took the lead and told her to sit down. She looked confused but complied. Claire led everything. I don't really know what to say to Mary at all and could barely make eye contact with her. Claire told her that Jane had been around and yelled at me for being an abuser and a bully, and asked her why she'd say those things. Mary acted confused and said that it must all just be miscommunication, that Jane just twists things sometimes and that she must have misunderstood stuff she'd really said. Then Claire asked about the text messages and started mentioning each quote-unquote event that Mary had cried to Jane about me being an awful person. Jane went quiet and then tried to say that it was a work joke, but Claire wasn't having any of it. She pushed harder about all of this and eventually Mary broke. She started crying and telling us that she never meant any of it, that it was a stupid thing and that it shouldn't matter, that she loved me with everything she had and that it was just a stupid story that went too far. She started begging me for forgiveness, but I was just so tired, and I still am. I looked her in the eye and for the first time I told her that she had a week to find a place and move out. Then she started really bawling her eyes out and begging me to let her stay, that she didn't think that it would matter because I don't work with them. But I told her that I was not having that kind of crap in my life. I then said, "So do you just make up lies about everyone in your life? Is any of it even real?" She went really quiet, dead silent at that point. I don't want to believe it, but the way that she was looking at me, the lies that she'd managed up about me abusing her, had me questioning everything that she'd ever told me when we were at university together. About her dad beating her mom, about her being homeless from 16 until they divorced. Then I told her to get her mom on the phone and she panicked and begged me not to. Claire then realized where I was going with this and asked her if everything we'd ever been told about her dad had been true, and she cracked and said that she may have embellished a few things. I am effing fuming at this point. Who the F makes up this kind of twisted stuff? For what benefit? I can't even write everything that was said, as it just resorted into a screaming match between all four of us as we learned that Mary's quote-unquote tragic life story had been nothing but a concoction to gain sympathy from others. Her parents are divorced, yes, but there was no abuse involved. They just fell out of love and split. I had to learn this by calling her mother myself later just to get clarity. I never said a word to her mom about anything in the past because Mary had warned me against it. She said that I could always be open with her about everything as that she wasn't ashamed, but her mom was quote-unquote sensitive and didn't want to talk about it. So it turns out my best friend is a master manipulator and probably always has been. I am so tired and exhausted of this whole nightmare. This will be the last update as I'm done. I came here seeking help and advice to find a way to mend a mistake I'd made with a trusted friend. But it turns out that the last 7 years have been built on a lie. I am effing done. With Mary, with everything. I don't want to see her again. I know that she can afford her own place, so I don't feel bad about kicking her out. I don't care what she does now. I just know that I don't want her around anymore. I think that I'm going to book myself some therapy sessions after all of this. It's not a happy update, but it's the only conclusion that I've got. Thank you everyone for all the advice that you've given me over the many updates. I appreciate all of it. I'm sorry it's not cheerful, but I hope that I can move on from all of this. I didn't think that I'd update any further, but since there's been so many responses, I can give you guys a little conclusion to how everything fully resolved. I didn't touch Reddit since my last update because I needed a lot of time to process what had happened, and having the place to myself was strange to adjust to at first, but as it turns out was very necessary to begin the healing process. Mary moved out the following Saturday of the incident. She spent the following days after the blow-up moping around the flat and wanting to talk to me, but I refused and I told her that I needed space. Her mom came on the weekend to help her pack up her things, as Mary was going to move back in with her. Her mom cleared up a lot of questions that I've had in my mind. I've always been told by Mary that her dad has been abusive, but her mom had loved him so much that she couldn't leave him. So she left home and was homeless when she was 14, sleeping under benches in train stations just so she didn't have to be in the house with him. She only moved back in when her mom finally got the guts to divorce her dad. This story I had believed for 7 years turned out to be completely fake. Not only was Mary never homeless, but her father was never abusive and loved her and her mom very much. The reason that I never saw him around was because he'd moved to Australia to pursue his career, which was the real reason for the divorce. He loved his family but wanted success even more, so he left. Her mom told me that Mary's dad was always inviting her over for the summer holidays, but Mary never went because she hates flying. The day she moved out, I stayed in my room and just hid away. But she knocked on my door before she left and I answered. I still wanted to say goodbye. She had been my closest friend for so long that it didn't feel right just letting her fade out of my life without a send-off. She asked me if I wanted the money I gave her for her new car, but I said no, and I told her to use it instead for therapy. She cried a lot and tried to hug me, but I kept her at a distance. I let her know that this would be the final time that we would ever speak or see each other. I just couldn't be around her anymore with the knowledge of what she'd done. She left sobbing, and when she was gone, my little town flat felt suddenly bigger than it had ever before. It's been hard adjusting to being alone in this place. For the first week she was gone, I still expected to see her in the kitchen every morning, or on the sofa when I got home. It was unsettling to say the least. I had my first therapy appointment last week, and I think it actually went well. I haven't been to therapy since I was in school, so I was very nervous to begin with, but my therapist is a very lovely lady who helped me understand that Mary's lies were her own making and that I had nothing to do with their creation. A lot of people said that she was probably a compulsive liar, maybe even a narcissist, and she seemed to agree loosely with the idea from what she's heard. In yet another revelation, I met with Jane for coffee as she'd asked to meet up with me and clear up some of the details. She told me that she'd been wondering why Mary would make me the target of her abuse story, and started asking people in her office about the things Mary had said about me in the past. One that stood out was a painter. They worked in art restoration and distribution, who used his art as a means of channeling his traumatic therapy with his abusive stepmother. Apparently, Mary had taken quite a liking to him, so she had first told him about her quote-unquote abuse as a way of getting closer to him. She'd mentioned fancying him in the past, but I didn't think she'd go to such lengths to create a connection between them. He'd been furious when he heard the truth and now doesn't speak to her anymore. Jane told me not many people do now. They were all now worried that she'd make up stuff about them and get them in trouble at work, so they're keeping her at an arm's length as a result. I feel a bit bad when I heard this, as I know that Mary is having a miserable time with our friendship group kicking her out as well. Jane apologized to me, but I told her that she had nothing to be sorry about, that this was all Mary, and that she was only trying to protect what she thought was an abused friend. We left each other on good terms, but we don't have much in common, so I doubt that we'll be friends in the future. Claire came to stay with me for a bit, which has helped me with the loneliness part a little. It's hard to be alone after having someone practically attached to your hip for so long. Thank you to you guys, as well as everyone who left such kind messages in the comments, many of which were very helpful. I'm so thankful to all of you for your words of advices and comfort that you've given me. It's made a horrible situation so much better to know that there are people out there who've been through the same things and offer words of encouragement to lost things like me. Thank you, everyone. So guys, what did you think about this? I was honestly flabbergasted when I first read this. Like, what? I am 100% sure that either Mary has some deep psychological issues going on, or that she's a compulsive liar. Probably both. I feel so sorry for OP, but I'm glad that she's doing so much better now. I hope that therapy does help her through it all. Anyway, if you guys did enjoy the story, please give it a thumbs up, and please subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories from Reddit with updates.